Hi, this is Eric Admin of the Sno-King Watershed Council, and I'm here to talk to you today about how to use the R card for collecting water samples to test for bacteria. So we've moved to the R card recently from the ColiScan Easy Gel technique, and I'll show you the materials that we're going to use and a couple different ways that you can collect and plate your samples. So R cards come in a variety of sizes and types. So we have a couple different types here. We have the R card ECCA, and this is designed for up to a 3 ml sample. So you can see this is a larger card. And then we have the R card ECC, which stands for E. coli and other coliform, in the 1 ml sample size. So you can do a maximum of a 1 milliliter sample with this one. Other materials that come with the R cards are, they come with a sterile container that you can collect samples in if you choose to. And they also come with pipettes. Typically we order the 1 milliliter pipette, but in some cases we like to use the 3 milliliter pipette, although we've discovered it's easiest to actually collect a 2 milliliter sample with this. Now I'm going to demonstrate a few different ways you can collect your sample, and then I'll demonstrate the process of plating onto the R card. So in terms of collecting your sample, there's 3 different ways. One is you can pipette directly from the stream. Another method is that you can use the sample container provided, the sterile sample container, which can be sterilized and reused, so you don't have to toss this after you've used it. And then some programs use a dipper, and so they collect their sample with a dipper, and then they pipette out of the dipper. So I'm going to demonstrate collecting a sample with each of these methods, and then how we plate the sample onto the R card, so you can see how that goes. So with the dipper, this is something that you're going to want to rinse out 2 to 3 times with stream water. Collect your sample, and this is something that some programs like because you can use this without getting into the stream. So I'm going to collect this sample, and I'm just going to set it somewhere stable. You could have a helper who holds it for you, or you can just put it somewhere where it's not going to tip over, so that you can pipette your sample out of that. So then what I like to do is I like to get my pipette ready. So for this purpose, we'll do a 3 milliliter pipette, and we'll do the 3 milliliter R card. Now if you watch the Roth training videos, they recommend that they either use sterile forceps or sterile gloves for opening this. What we found in practice in the field is that that can be a bit difficult for people. So I think for our purposes, if you just have dry, clean hands and you're careful not to stick your fingers right in the principal area of the R card flap, then you won't have a problem. So I've got my pipette opened. I'm going to get my pipette out, ready to collect my sample. So I've got my clean pipette, and then I'm going to take my R card and I'm going to carefully open it up and just hold the flap back. And now I'm going to collect a 2 milliliter sample. I could do up to a 3 milliliter sample, and I'm just pipetting directly out of this sample jar here. So I've got a 2 milliliter sample, and I'm just going to place this on the center of the card and keep it centered. And that's the trick with this technique, is keeping your sample centered. So once I've collected the sample, I'm going to let the lid drop back, the flap, and you can see how it starts to spread out. And the key at this point is just to hold it approximately level. Luckily, this is a card that's designed for a 3 milliliter sample, and we're just collecting 2 milliliters. So it shouldn't spread too far. It shouldn't spread beyond the edges of the card. The other issue that people encounter sometimes when they're collecting on an R card is that if you tip your card sideways at this point, some of your sample can run off, and so at that point you just have to repeat your sample. So the key is whether you hold it, or some people put it on a clipboard and hold the clipboard level, or you might have a partner help you hold it. You just want to let it sit level until, you know, maybe 30 seconds to a minute have passed, and then essentially it's spread out as far as it's going to spread out, so you can just set it on a level surface and you're ready to collect your next sample. So I could do up to 3 samples with the same pipette. For our purposes, I'm going to demonstrate collecting a sample with the 1 milliliter pipette. So I'm going to put this one away and I'm going to use a different sample. The next thing I'm going to demonstrate is I'm going to demonstrate collecting the sample with the container, the sterile container that comes with the R card. So in this case, and in every case, remember, if I'm standing in the stream, I want to collect the sample upstream of myself, or I may not even have to get into the stream at all. So in this case, I'm getting into the stream and I'm collecting the sample in my sterile container. And if I wanted to carry this sample back somewhere, like say to my vehicle or another location, I could put a cap on it and I could then pipette out of this sample at a different location. So for your site, that may make it easier. In this case, I'm just going to put it on my box here that has my water monitoring equipment. So I mentioned clean, dry hands. So I'm going to dry off my hands so I'm not getting any additional bacteria or contaminants on the card. I could use hand sanitizer if I wanted to be absolutely careful. And now I'm going to get my 1 milliliter pipette out. I'm going to get my R card ready to collect a sample. So I'm just going to carefully pull this back. And I'm going to draw a 1 milliliter sample. And again, I'm just going to carefully place my 1 milliliter sample in the center of the card until the whole sample is there. Let the flap drop back, and then I'm just going to watch that sample and let it gradually spread out. And you can see that if I tip it, it does go in a certain direction. So if I don't hold it level as it spreads out, it's possible it could go beyond the edge of the card. But at a certain point, it just quits spreading out. And you're safe to collect another sample and plate another sample. So for the last sample, what we're going to do is we're going to demonstrate pipetting directly from the creek and then putting it on your R card. So this one I think is fairly safe right now. It doesn't seem to be traveling too much. So I can put this on a flat surface. Just let it finish kind of gelling, which just takes a couple minutes. So now in this case, I could have a partner holding this card, or I could be holding it myself. In this case, I'm going to get it ready to go so that when I collect my sample, I'm ready to put it right onto the R card. So I'm not going to get into the creek. I'm going to just draw my sample, making sure I'm not on the bottom of the creek. Okay, so I've collected my 1 mil sample. Again, I'm just going to pipette, plate it directly in the center of the R card. You can see how it kind of stays together in one bubble. Then release the flap. And again, I'll just wait for it to spread out. And then once it is finished spreading out and appears to be stable, I can set it down, and then we'll be ready to take these to where we're going to incubate them and place them in our incubator. So that's it for now. The next segment I will show how we incubate the R cards.